Hey, everybody. William Howe should be giving us a call anytime now. We said scheduled for 8 o'clock. And hey, everybody. William Howe should be giving us a call anytime now. We said scheduled for 8 o'clock. There we go. Hey, I turned my phone off. I had the little delay in there. Anyway, William Howe's going to give us a call any minute now. If you follow my podcast, The Lighter Side of True Crime, he has caught up a couple times. And it's never a dull moment when Bill calls. You never know quite what he's going to say. But he's a funny guy. When we're talking about serial killers and violent offenders, I try to separate what they have done in the past from our conversations and our interviews. I do this. If you've ever seen the series Mindhunter with John Douglas, it's loosely based on the TV show Criminal Minds is loosely based on that, where he was one of the first people to interview serial killers in order how to catch serial killers. I don't do it in order to how to catch serial killers, but I'm fascinated by brain abnormalities. I'm fascinated, for example, there are evil people in the world who commit murder, and there's people with brain abnormalities who do evil things. The people I have on my podcast, the Happy Face Killer, Keith Jesperson. We've had Manson family members on before, Bruce Davis. And today, William Howe is going to give us a call in a couple of minutes. I just wanted to kind of get up rolling until he does. We got a couple more minutes. We got about 9 minutes or so. Just explain a little bit why I do what I do. If you haven't followed the podcast, I used to be called The Lighter Side of Serial Killers, but I switched the name to The Lighter Side of True Crime to have more guests on the show. I have people like Louise Turpin on the show, Pearl Fernandez, the Happy Face Killer, Keith Jesperson, Wayne Adam Ford, and many people, these serial offenders. Not that we're praising them, but we're learning more about them. Most documentaries focus on the crimes. They focus on the stories themselves, certainly the victims, the most important part. But when they interview or try to interview serial killers, they're very hesitant because their guard's up. They don't like to be poked and prodded. They don't like to be tested. They don't like to have their brain MRI'd to find out if they're a psychopath or not. They do have emotions. And again, I have these people on my show, not to praise them, not to glorify them, but to learn more about them. My last book, The Story of You, focused on different part of brain abnormalities and really questioning somebody's free will when they have psychopathy, especially when the part of the brain called the amygdala is damaged. That's where it houses fear, empathy, the ability to stop yourself before you do something violent. They don't have the ability. So I really questioned free will in order to learn more about them, how to study them, how to help. Like in prison facilities, if they're not deterred by fear, punishment certainly isn't going to deter them. But if you look at the Norway prison system, it's a reward-based system. And that system houses the lowest recidivism rate in the world, which means the odds that they're going to reoffend usually within 3 to 5 years. And that's now down below 12%. In American prison systems, it's over 70% chance they're going to reoffend once they get out. And so I promote positive reinforcement. I have people like Wayne Adam Ford on the show. He was known as a serial killer with compassion because he turned himself in. He was on my show talking about what helps him, somebody who is autistic, somebody with Asperger's, somebody with psychopathy. What helps somebody like him? And he talked about it, not just his faith, but what kind of medication, what type of counseling helps. Because believe it or not just myself, when I have these men and women considered serial killers and violent offenders on my show, you can imagine my following. I have a girl that follows me over in Italy, young girl, just got her driver's license. Her brain isn't quite like our brain. She has urges to do these horrible, violent things. What kind of doctor is going to help her? So Wayne Adam Ford, I actually, believe it or not, as wild as this sounds, I put those two in connection with each other. Wayne, from prison, a serial killer, who was on death row in California, San Quentin, but they put a moratorium on death row, so they now move them to different level 2 facilities around California, has helped her more than any doctor so far has helped her because he's been there, done that. He actually went out and did the murders. I mean, he has multiple murders under his belt, unfortunately. If you don't know him, he was the one where when he turned himself in with his brother, he talks about this in my podcast. If you go to Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, check that out. And when he turned himself in with his brother, the police didn't believe it was him. And because his bodies were chopped up, horrible crimes. So he was the one who pulled out a woman's breast out of his pocket and said, it's me. Here it is. It's like, oh, yeah, I guess that's him. But even in prison, people ask, well, why do I reach out to them, these men and women? Because they can still help from there. So Wayne has been helping her with her horrible urges and has really been a benefit to her. I mean, when you have psychopathy, and one of her abnormalities is she doesn't have the ability to feel happiness. Imagine that. You already have these horrible, violent urges, and her brain, what's the condition? On top of my head, I can't remember. but you don't have the ability to feel happiness. I mean, how horrible is to go through life than that? And she's just a kid. She's just a child, which is horrible. Look at David Berkowitz. I've done multiple projects with David Berkowitz. And from prison, with his website, him and Charles Tex Watson from the Manson family, they're both their website. It's faith-based websites. They have reached thousands of people for positive change in their life. So part of the reason I reach out to these men and women is so if they have changed in there, one, what has helped them change? Counseling, promotion, volunteers, people like me showing kindness and compassion to these men and women, not just to help change them, but maybe they can be a blessing to other people, as wild as that sounds, but it's true. It's like Wayne and her. Like, look at Rise and Shine. And look at the websites that Tex Watson from the Manson family, from the Charles Manson family, and David Berkowitz. Look at their websites and see how much positive change and testimonies came from their horrible past. You can't say overcoming their past, but what they have changed in prison, what they had changed in their heart in prison, now helping other people. Dr. Scott Bond, one of the world's leading criminologists, has been on my podcast numerous times and has a wonderful one-man show. If you haven't read his book, America's Fascination with Serial Killers, he has an amazing one-man show. And part of that, he talks about, one, meeting BTK. You know, I've talked to BTK a few times. If you saw my piece that The Independent did on me, or the piece on Fox News, BTK sends me Christmas cards and stuff. But aside from him, we'll get into that later if we have time. But with David Berkowitz, he went to visit David Berkowitz in prison, Dr. Scott Bond. And I had told him that, he's a changed man. People have heard, he does Christian faith at David Berkowitz. Is it true? Is it not true? When he went to visit him, he didn't believe a word of it. But after he left, he was there for hours, all afternoon with David Berkowitz. When David was crying and just empathizing with the victims, he left believing that this is a changed man. Like, if anyone deserves parole, it was David Berkowitz. Not that he says that he should have parole, but he really has that much of a change in heart. So it is possible. Now, that David Berkowitz is a psychopath, I don't believe so, because somebody like that can have those type of emotions. It's deeper than that sometimes. But a lot of my platform is questioning free will and those with psychopathy, because it's not curable right now. And we know that guys like Adrian Rain, a professor and neurologist out of Philadelphia, and I've been trying to get on the show forever. It's an amazing book. And I published some of his longitudinal studies, his progress with psychopathy. We see that fish oil, having a little fish oil, 10 milligrams of fish oil, reduces the urges for violent crime. He did like a double-blind study at a prison facility. We got a little time before Bill calls. Any minute, William Howe is going to call. Serial killer out of Connecticut, 7 victims. He did a double-blind study. Had a bunch of kids or youth, violent youth at a facility. And some he gave 10 milligrams of omega-3 of fish oil. 10 people thought they were getting it but didn't get it, and the other 10 just didn't get anything. They followed their lives for a year or so. Only those who actually had the 10 milligrams a day of the fish oil reduced the violence they had in prison, reduced their offenses. So there's something to that. The countries that eat two or three times their body weight in fish a year have the least amount of violent crimes in the world. Those countries who eat virtually no fish have the highest amount of violent crime. So we're learning more about fish oil and how it affects the brain, and what part of the brain needs to be kind of tweaked a little bit to checking the time because Bill's going to call. Just getting more aware and more motivation behind them. So there's a lot of cool studies. Read my book, The Story of You, about Yu Masaki. That's Y-U Masaki. And you can read all about those studies. And Yu himself was featured on Signs of a Psychopath, Season 3, Episode 1, called I Am Strange. So fascinating. I had to get in contact with him. And his life was so amazing, from a psychotic, schizophrenic with Asperger's. If you know anything about those with Asperger's, if they focus on one thing, that's it. You're focused, laser focused. Mixed his childhood abuse and everything else mixed in. Horrible atrocities with him growing up. He was laser focused on one girl. And when that girl refused him, he kept stalking and stalking and stalking. Then murders happened. And the most amazing stories that he said that so many more people could have died in his path. But through that, took me on a journey of brain abnormalities. Again, questioning free will, kind of like somebody with Tourette's. They don't have the ability to free will to stop the ticking, or stop, the verbal, like an overweight person walks by, then might say, like, fatty. A black person walks by, they may say the N-word, and it's uncontrollable. And I'm bringing that to psychopathy in some cases anyway, brain abnormalities, where is uncontrollable urge to do violence. And just studying that, how can we help this? How can we prevent this? How can we corral this once we know who has it and who hasn't? And so anyway, William Howe is going to give us a call any minute now. I told him to call at 8 o'clock. and usually get 15-minute phone calls. So hopefully we can do a couple phone calls with him. Once he calls, if you have any questions, pop up. I can see some of the questions popping in the screen off to my side now. He's real open. He had 7 victims, and he'll tell his story. It was prostitutes that he had. Oh, here he comes.
Hello, this is a free call from
Bill.
Make sure you can hear everything good. If you can't hear anything, let me
an
know.
incarcerated individual at
Cheshire Correctional Institution.
This call is not private. It will be recorded and may be monitored. If you believe this should be a private call, please hang up and follow facility instructions to register this number as a private number. To accept this free call, press 1. To refuse this, thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now.
Gee, how you doing?
Hey, how are you, my friend?
I'm all right. I was wondering, which thing am I on tonight, TikTube or Utah?
Oh, we're going on YouTube today. Yeah, for those listening, we did a TikTok live. I guess we just got that in on nick of time. They might be shutting that down tomorrow, I hear. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I think tonight's going to be the last night of it.
Mm-hmm.
According to the news or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to work out.
Mm-hmm. So how you doing today? Everything going good?
Yeah, I'm all right.
I was just telling everybody, I hopped on about 10 minutes early, talking about, different prison facilities. Some are horrible. Some, just nothing but punishment, torture style. Some are very positive and reward-based. At your facility, talk about some of, as far as your relationship with the guards, the people there, the people who run the place. What have been some of your positive experiences there, or the most positive, and what have been some of the most negative experiences there at your time at Cheshire?
Well, I don't know really what the most positive things are. I know what the most negative things are, though.
Mm-hmm.
If it's one of them off, they just come in and tear your freaking cell apart for, no good reason because you stood up for what you're supposed to get or whatever.
Yeah.
I argue with them a lot over outside rec because at this facility, man, they seem to hate to let you outside, and that's really all I really give a shit about is going outside. So when I feel like they unjustly deny my outside rec time, I get a little irate about it, and I'll argue with them a little bit, and then certain ones will retaliate and come in and tear my cell apart. As you know, I like to do things for Christmas and Halloween, and I had an asshole in here on rotation this holiday season. So he had it out for me because I had argued with him over outside rec, earlier in the year. And he got the rotation. They rotate, the guards rotate every 8 weeks. We'll get a new crew in. Sometimes, they'll get a double rotation or whatever, but the crews rotate every 8 weeks.
Oh, gotcha.
And we had an asshole in here that kind of had it out for me. So I had my cell decorated for Halloween, so he came in and ripped down all the Halloween decorations. And I'd asked him, I was like, well, you got your little rocks off, or are we good now? Can I hang up my Christmas stuff? And he said, I'd advise against it. So
Wow.
I canceled Christmas this year.
Wow.
I've got a little Christmas tree that I've made that I put up every year, and I hang my Christmas cards up. You know what I mean? And we try and decorate myself for Christmas, but this year we had the Grinch was working in the unit, so I didn't even. He canceled my Christmas. But I mean, for the most part, the COs are pretty decent. You know what I mean? They come in, they do their job, they treat you fair. But there's a handful of assholes that group together and just come in and want to make inmates' lives as miserable as possible. Yeah. They feel that just being in prison isn't punishment enough.
Yeah.
For us being in here, they want to make our lives as miserable as they possibly can. They get their jollies from it. They enjoy doing it,
Yeah.
But that's, the majority of them are pretty decent and treat us fair.
That's good. Yeah, no, you don't get much time outside. You don't really get much of a view out there. You pretty much have a concrete view, you're telling me, as far as the no grass, no trees.
Our outside rec yard is connected to our building. So all they have to do is open the door, and we go out, and we're in our outside rec yard. Our outside rec yard is approximately 30 feet wide by maybe almost 75 feet long, maybe 100 feet long. It's all blacktop surface. There's a basketball goal out there mounted on one half of the wall, and the other half of the wall is a handball court. So two of the walls are 4-foot tall. 4-story tall building makes up two of the walls, and the other two walls are 10-foot tall block concrete walls topped by 5-foot of razor wire.
Wow.
And my window in my cell looks out onto our rec yard, and about 100 yards past our perimeter wall of our rec yard, there's a line of trees, and I can see maybe the top half of that line of oak trees.
Yeah.
And that is the view outside of my window. I don't see a car. I don't see a house. I don't see people walking by. I don't see anything. I can see the sky, and I can see that line of trees, and I see our rec yard. That's my view. 24/7, 7 days a week.
Yeah. And we joke about, because there's times you have to go to the hospital, get checked out, or get something work done.
Yes.
And
Yes.
talk a little bit about the ride that you go and how happy you are.
Oh,
just to go, the things we take for granted here.
And I've told you this story several times before, kid, but we had a dog growing up, and if you shook the keys, the dog would go nuts. You know what I mean? As soon as you open the door, the dog's running straight to the car. If the window's down in the car, he's jumping through the window. He's in the car, before you can get out of the door. He just loves to go for rides in the car. Now I'm that dog.
Yeah.
Because when they say, Howell, you got to go to the hospital. You got a UConn appointment. UConn is the state collegiate hospital here or whatever. And I go there twice a year for eye exams, early stages of glaucoma or whatever. So I go to the UConn twice a year for a comprehensive eye exam. And when they don't tell me before, they'll tell me I'm going, that I have a trip coming up, but they won't tell me what day for safety and security reasons. So they'll pop my door at 7 o'clock in the morning and say, Howell, you're going to UConn this morning. And all of a sudden, I'm that dog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have no idea how it is just to see somebody pumping gas at a gas station. You're like, hey, there's somebody pumping gas. You know what I mean? And sometimes we'll get good COs that take the back way or whatever. And man, that's not a field trip, man. You have no idea to go out and see a house or a car going down the road, or somebody walking their dog down the sidewalk or something. You know what I mean? That's unheard of for me in here.
Yeah.
You sit in this little room for 6 months, and then you just to see somebody pumping gas is a remarkable sight to.
It's a thing.
It's amazing.
You said something. The last time we did a live that blew me away was, when's the last time you had an ice cube? Or soda? Things we take for granted. We just take for granted these things.
It's been a while.
Yeah. That's
the last
crazy.
time I had an ice cube was in 2017, and that was the first ice cube I had in 12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like you got a couple of friends pop on the live. Your friend Kristen's on here. Our friend from England, he's on here. He says hi, Bill.
Right.
So you got a couple people. You got some friends online tonight.
Yeah. Kristen, that's my unicorn from out in California.
Yeah, the new one.
Yeah.
And,
okay.
When I was talking earlier before he came on about the Norway prison system, where it's actually a positive reward base, where they treat prisoners with kindness and love and compassion to help them get back on their feet. What difference do you think that would make?
They don't do that here.
I'm going to say,
they don't do that.
How much of a better living environment and helping people getting not just rehabilitated, but just encouraged and to do anything, whether it's being positive from prison to those on the outside, those who are going to get out, more of a positive foundation. How big of a difference would that make if they actually treated you like human beings there and not that punishment, fear-minded place?
Well, I have mixed feelings about that, because prison is supposed to be about, punishment and deterring you from wanting to do things to come back to prison. And I understand that there their program out there works for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't believe they have the same caliber of crime to begin with as we have here.
Yeah.
I think the better answer would be starting in communities before anybody even comes to prison.
Yeah.
Is what I would think. Because, I mean, if you start giving people, miniature apartments to live in with, microwaves and mini fridges and cable TV in their cell, you couldn't get people to freaking leave. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You couldn't kick them out of prison. You realize you're getting home, you're going home today. Oh, hell no, I ain't. I'm staying right here.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point.
And a lot of people in here were rescued instead of being arrested anyway. Some people in here are living better than they lived on the street out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't necessarily think that Norway's solution will be the solution for the U.S.
Yeah, might not be.
Now, I believe their solutions need to start in the communities. I think better parenting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think, you got a lot of kids today that are being raised, that are raising themselves, or they've got parents that aren't there or drug addicted or you know what I mean, whatever reason, their parenting isn't there to raise the kids up right to keep them out of prison in the first place. And then you got the gang problems and all that. I think that there is the issue.
Yeah.
As to more of the incarceration. And I believe that once they are incarcerated, that states should have more, not to handle them with kid gloves, but do more to prepare them so they can be successful when they do get out.
Yeah.
Teach the inmates plumbing or electrical or carpentry, things like that. And I think a lot of the population, the public believes that exists, but I can tell you that here in Connecticut, it's very, very limited.
Gotcha.
They used to have something here. I don't even think they have it anymore. Bicycle repair.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
When you get out, there's not a big demand for bicycle repairers. You know what I mean? There's not a big job market out there for people that know how to repair bicycles. Teach them how to weld. Teach them how to work in the trades that will hire convicted felons.
Yes.
I will say that for this facility, there is like a collegiate program where you can take college courses. And I'm all for people, advancing their education. But on the flip side of that, I also have a belief that any job that's going to require you to have college courses is not going to hire a convicted felon.
Yeah.
So you're just pissing in the wind by taking this college course. Learn how to weld. Learn how to read a tape measure. Learn how to swing a hammer. Learn how to go out and get a job that you can get as a convicted felon.
Yeah.
So you don't have to get out and do the same shit you were doing before.
Yeah, 100%
But a lot
right.
of people in here are in here for drug dealing, and it's quick and easy money, and they get out and they do the same damn thing, and they're right back.
Yeah.
A guy just came back in 3 months ago. He got out of the same unit and was out for 96 days.
Oh, jeez.
Came back for robbing, stealing, and doing smash and grabs in jewelry stores and weapons possession. The same damn shit. You know what I mean? And if you let him out tomorrow, he will go back and he will do the same damn shit over again.
One thing
You know what I mean? This one particular guy just has no ambition to change his life.
Yeah. One thing I did like about, not that Norway started it, but I think North Dakota is doing it too, is the local business owners are the ones going into the prisons and teaching the people the trade. So when they come out, they can work at their place, like the ones who are going to hire those who have a record.
You have 1 minute left.
So, that's, to me, I think that's a great idea.
Yes. To have some kind of sponsorship by by business owners that will sponsor an inmate to teach him that and will offer him a job when he gets out. So he has the opportunity. Now, he may not be successful, but at least he has the opportunity to be successful.
Yeah, that's
so you know what I mean. So the rest is on him. You know, you can't just. You have to have the ambition to change your life too. Your life doesn't just change by itself.
Yeah,
you have to be willing to change your life because nobody can change your life but yourself.
Definitely.
But a lot of these guys in here, they just have no ambition. You know what I mean? They glorify their crimes, and all they want to do when they get out is the same shit they were doing before they came in.
Yeah.
And I see it every day. One guy's great plan for success
Thank you for using Securus. Goodbye.
All right. So if you heard, it was a 1 minute warning, and then the person hangs up. He's going to call right back in a second, though. But it's good. I'm glad you can hear pretty clearly. I tried to do this the first time on TikTok Live just with my phone. I have a studio here in my house. I kind of just moved this to my man cave. You can see, this is some artwork in the background. And we'll get into, maybe we'll get into, I don't know if you can see that scary guy right there with the mask, the bloody shirt. There's an axe right there. Somebody that we might be talking to made that at his prison facility at Cheshire. He was the only one in Halloween who actually dressed up. Here we go.
Hello, this is a free call from...
I don't know how he got it out, but that's from him.
An incarcerated individual at
Cheshire Correctional Institution.
This call is not private.
And we'll talk a
It
little
will be
about how he got in
recorded
trouble,
and may
too.
be monitored. If you believe this should be a private call, please hang up and follow facility instructions to register this number as a private number. To accept this free call, press 1. To refuse, thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now.
Yeah, to pick up where I left off, this one guy's plan for success was, and I heard him say this out of his own mouth, and it just blew me away. This is pretty much his exact words were, "When I get out, I'm not selling crack no more because crackheads will rat you out. I'm just going to sell heroin."
Yeah.
That's his plan for success. You know what I mean?
It's amazing.
So I mean, that's the Bradyacks that I'm locked up around, you know. And I see it day in, day out. There's no opportunities in here to better yourself in this unit that I'm in. And pretty much throughout Connecticut, they've done away with a lot of the vocational trades that they used to teach.
Gotcha.
And they didn't really teach very many good ones when they did. They taught carpentry at one time, but you built houses out of popsicle sticks. That was your carpentry class.
Yeah.
But,
That's terrible.
But I mean, and there's not many rehabilitation in here, and there's not many people that seem very interested in it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll go to a program so they can, go to the parole board and say, "Yeah, I did this program," and then they'll get out and they'll do the same damn shit they were doing before they got locked up. So I don't know if Norway's plan would work here because you give them an apartment with a TV and cable and a big fridge and a microwave and all of that. I don't see how that's gonna teach them anything.
Yeah, good
I'd rather the state teach them carpentry or teach them welding.
Yeah.
Teach inmates something where they can use when they get out. So.
And that's part of what they do there too. But what do you think with yourself? Like, I mean, the people that talk to you, people who have heard me talk about you, or when you come on to a live like this, they see the sense of humor. He seems like, oh my God, he seems like a great guy. I can't believe he would do something like that. I can't picture the two. What do you think would have changed? Like, what do you think you would have to avoid the crimes that happened that you did? What do you think could have prevented that? Anything in your life? Or I know you're a little different because people think that that you hate women, which is the exact opposite. I'm like, listen, trust me, this guy loves women more than I love women. It's nothing to do with that.
That's not true at all.
Exactly.
I love women. Skinny women, not skinny women, pretty women, not so pretty women. I love them all. I don't think none of them. I love them all. For me, it was a million little things, Keith. And if any one of those little things would have been different, I wouldn't have been sitting here talking to you right now. The biggest thing is, I had this big prostitute addiction. I love the fact that, well, I always had a strong sexual drive when I was out there anyway, but I love the fact that I could just pick this chick up, give her $20, and she'd suck on my ding dong, let me play with her boobies, maybe even get my finger wet, you know, and never even ask her name. And that was a huge turn on to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just the anonymity of it and the sex. And to know that I could just pick this chick up, give her $20, a ding dong sucked on, and never even ask for her name. Which a lot of times I would do that on purpose just so I wouldn't know her name. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I don't know who she is, but she sucks on the ding dong real good. So when I picked one up and she stole my rent money from me, it kind of set me off.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, the next one I pick up owes me a whole lot of sex.
Mm.
And that's what kicked my whole little crime spree off.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of other contributing factors that supported me in that.
Mm-hmm.
I had a girlfriend at the time that drove me absolutely freaking nuts. She was undiagnosed bipolar, so I mean, you never knew what you were going to get with her. You said good morning to her, you didn't know if you were going to get bright eyes and a smile or cussed out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So she had me absolutely stressed out and on edge. And then I had low self-esteem issues. I felt like I was a failure in life.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So I had all of those contributing factors adding to it. Now, if any one of those things would have changed, I probably wouldn't have went on and committed my crimes. But I've always had a big vigilante streak in me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm the nicest guy in the world. I don't do nobody any harm. But when somebody wrongs me, oh man, I want revenge with a vengeance. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
I want my just rights. I want to get even. And I've always been like that. And I hate thieves, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hate criminals, and I hate the people I'm locked up with. And part of my committing my crimes is I put my victims in that category.
Mm-hmm.
I had kind of convinced myself that I was making the world a better place than what I was doing.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I told myself that, and in no way did my victims deserve what they got.
Sure.
But I told myself that by jumping in a van with me, they assumed the risk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because any chick that's walking up and down the street selling her ass on the side of the road, knows that if she gets in a car with a stranger, bad things can happen. So I use that to justify a little bit. And like, again, not as far to go as saying as they deserve what they got, but they bought the lottery ticket. So if their number came up, I told myself that they were out selling their ass on the street while they had toddlers at home crying and hungry and in a dirty diaper.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? While their mom sold her ass on the street so she could shoot junk in her arm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was somehow, in what I was doing, I was giving these kids a better life.
Mm-hmm.
Where they wouldn't be raised by a drug-addicted prostitute mother. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So I just told myself all kinds of things to make what I was doing all right with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the gravity of what I was doing didn't weigh in on me because, I mean, in my mind, and this doesn't sound good, but if I took a $20 crack whore out of the world, big deal. Who would miss a $20 crack whore?
Gotcha.
And that's not a nice thing to say, but that's where I was in my mind.
Okay.
But what brought it all home to me is when I walked into the courtroom and I heard the sobs and the cries of the victims' families and their loved ones.
Yeah.
The sobs and cries of good, innocent people. And to know that I had caused them that pain, that brought it all home to me. You know what I mean? I felt like the biggest piece of shit in the world.
Yeah.
Because I would never do anything to harm good, innocent people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And these were good, innocent people in this courtroom that had done nothing but try to live their life, go to work every day, and trying to make a life for themselves.
Yeah.
And they were crying, and it was because of pain that I caused them.
Mm-hmm.
And that brought it all home to me.
Yeah.
That really hit home.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And to be clear, too, I mean, there was a book written about you by Ann Howard called His Garden.
Yeah.
And every time we talk, and, you know, we talk about the book or talk about what you've done, I always like to make it clear, because people to watch, a lot of people I have like yourself on the show, is to clear up a lot of things. What happened, not necessarily just with the crimes, but just in general, who they are as a person. And the big thing that I like to tell everybody is, first of all, there's no such thing as you naming where you dispose of the bodies as your garden, and you didn't nickname your truck or your van.
No, that was all made up by the inmate.
Mm-hmm.
An inmate that had come forward and claimed that I had said those things, and he was trying to get favor from either prosecutions in their own case, a favor from parole boards. They had a hidden agenda.
Yeah.
And there were quite a few people that had come forward and say, "Oh, well, Howell told me this," or "Howell told me that," and it was complete fabrication.
Yeah.
And the prosecutor would leak it to the press, and the press would print it. And once it was printed in the press, it became real.
Yeah, that's it.
I've never referred to the area where I bury my victims as my garden. I've never referred to the van that I had as the murder-mobile.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounded good to the media, so the media ran with it.
Yeah.
The reason I cooperated with Ann Howard in writing her book was because I saw that as an avenue to correct some of these inaccuracies that were being said about me.
And you made it worse.
But she seemed to just take the inaccuracies and run with them anyway, because they made a better story, and then she just put a footnote at the bottom of the page. Howell disagrees with this or something.
Yeah, well, she did. I know you can't read the book, but I mentioned to you one of the first.
Yeah, I've never read the book, so I can't say 100% for sure what's right and what isn't. I read the pre-final manuscript and wrote down my critiques and what was right and what was wrong, and sent that back to her. Yeah. But I don't know what got changed, what got left in, what got taken out, because I've never seen a final print of the book. Mm-hmm. It's outlawed in Connecticut state prisons. Nobody can get it, and they won't even let me read it myself. So
and I
can't read the book that was written about myself.
Yeah.
So.
And I told you how the book starts out with her saying that, you know, some of these details she said I had to make up some of these details to make it a better book. I mean, she said flat out says it in the beginning. Yeah. I mean, that just tells you where it is. That's crazy. And when it's wild, because we live in what's called this true crime era. You know, everybody's, they want to write about something, a documentary about something. And I know you, I mean, you must have countless requests, getting letters all the time. What are some of the most wild requests, like through letters, that people have either asked you for something, or what are some of the crazy ones that you get? Like, what? You want me to send you what?
I don't know, do podcasts?
Yeah.
I'm just screwing with you. No, people, they want me to cooperate with them in stories. I guess some of them, I still get requests. If you ever want to tell your story, you want to write a book, I'll be your ghostwriter or whatever, you know what I mean? Obviously, they don't even know that there's already been a book written that I'm already against.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's, but a lot of people want, hand tracings, and you know what I mean? A lot of people that write me make me feel like a novelty or a hobby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hate feeling like I'm just somebody's hobby. You know what I mean? They don't give a shit about me. They want a piece for their true crime memorabilia collection, or they want to brag to a friend that they're in contact with a serial killer, or whatever their own ulterior motive is. But 90% of the people that write me have an ulterior motive. Yeah. Now, there have been some genuine ones over the years or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of them come and go, Yeah. Usually the ones that aren't genuine don't stick around very, very long at all. Yeah. Because I'll ask them for $20, and as soon as I ask them for $20, boom, they're done. You know what I mean? Yeah, they want. But when it comes to, let me send him $20 to help him out, he's broke.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're finished. You know what I mean? So that weeds out a lot of the genuine ones.
Yeah.
But,
do you find that? Do you find out like when people first reach out to you, or maybe write to you, or especially talk to you on the phone, like they're expecting like the big bad boogeyman, and then when they find out that like people listening today, you're just talking like a normal person, like, well, that's not what I was expecting. I don't want that. I want this crazy psycho and this and that.
I think a lot of them disappear because I bore them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's when people write me, they have this grandiose expectation of what they're expecting me to be like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when I'm not like that, it bores them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them I just consider headline chasers anyway. They just, once I write them back, they got what they wanted. They just go on to the next headline.
You have 1 minute left.
Mm-hmm. I call them headline chasers.
Yeah.
But anyway, the phone is going to hang up in less than a minute. I want to give a shout out to my unicorn in the desert in California, because I've discovered that unicorns live in the desert. And to my good friend down in Kentucky, if they're listening tonight, they'll know who they are. And I just want to say hello to them.
Cool beans. And, well, definitely. Yeah. Thanks for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Yep.
Yes.
I hope you have a good night, Keith, and I hope we talk again soon.
Definitely. I'll talk to you soon, Bill.
Yep. All right. Have a good night, Keith.
You too. All right. Well, there you go. A conversation with William Howe, a convicted serial offender out of Connecticut. And some people actually in the chat are pen pals with him. They've been writing him for a while. And what's amazing is, and a lot of reason I have people like Bill on my podcast. And if you haven't listened to podcasts, head over to Spotify, The Lighter Side of True Crime. It was called The Lighter Side of Serial Killers, but there's a lot of serial killers who didn't want to go on the podcast because of the name. So I switched it a little bit. So if you hear like news articles about me or see me on a TV show or something, and they reference the old podcast, you can still be able to find me. You can noodle around a little bit. But for when you watch a documentary, like if you read the book about Bill, or there's been documentaries about Bill, and listening to him today, you're like, well, that's not what the documentary said. That's not what the pseudo-psychiatrist on a show said who's never interviewed Bill. They really get the wrong impression. Now, what he did was horrible. I mean, we're not condoning anything like that. I'm just talking about get to know somebody's motivation. Like he said why he did what he did. You're not going to get that on the documentary. You're not going to get that reading the book. So that's kind of one of the reasons I do what I do and have people on the podcast. And now we'll be doing some lives and a bunch of people on the live show to get their story out. And it's fascinating because you would think, like one who I even thought, David Carpenter, the Trailside Killer. I started a relationship with him. It took a long time. He's old. I think he's like 94, 93, something like that. 90 years old. He was one of the oldest men in San Quentin's death row until they transferred people out off of death row into different level 2 facilities. He has a horrible stutter problem. So it took me like a couple of years just to get him to call me on the phone. And then I did a video chat with him. Now, you're thinking the Trailside Killer, all these victims and, gruesome murders. I'm like, man, what's this guy going to be like? He was like now, again, not demeaning what he has done in the past, but the expectations of what you think you're going to talk to somebody about. All he did was smile and laugh. And I have pictures of it, like a screenshot it with his permission, just his big, bright smile. So happy to, to talk to anybody, really. Because he doesn't talk to anybody. He talked to his daughter. That's really the only person he'll talk to on the phone. So I'm lucky, he called me a couple times and keeps saying he's thinking about the podcast. He says yes, and he says no, because he's very embarrassed about his stutter. He has a very bad stutter. I'm like, if I do just a phone call, I can edit a lot of that out, make it sound a little better. So maybe not. But people like that on the show, or Keith Jesperson, the Happy Face Killer, he must have been on my podcast, I don't know, 12, 13 times or so. And a great sense of humor. Now Keith is a little different because most people, and Bill's okay talking about the crimes, not in depth, but sometimes I'll go in a little bit of detail. But Keith Jesperson goes in very, very deep detail about how he killed them, how he strangled them, and how he realized he's learning of how to strangle and quicker ways to do it, how to dispose of the body. You don't really get that on documentaries, that in-depth thing. Now, it's called The Lighter Side of True Crime because I don't ask those type of questions. I want to hear about positive change in their life and who has. Now, Keith Jesperson admits, he's just a narcissistic psychopath. And he revels in what he's done, and he likes that attention. If he went viral, I went viral with him a little bit because when the Long Island serial killer suspect, Rex Heuermann, I got arrested. Keith had asked me for his address, and I gave him his address in jail. So Keith Jesperson, a happy face killer, wrote Rex Schuerman. Well, Rex wrote him back. And when Keith was being interviewed by a Florida, I guess she's a detective or somewhere in one form of the department or another, because they identified one of his victims. And he wasn't, finally, I forget what the girl's name was. Well, as they were interviewing him in Oregon State Prison, where he's at, he had mentioned, and they had a little video camera on him, we agreed to, and they published the part where he said, hey, I wrote Rex Schuerman, and Rex wrote me back. So that went completely viral. So everybody's digging into Keith, and they found he was on my podcast. So we did a podcast together of him talking about Rex's letter and what Rex wrote in the letter. And if you look behind me, I'm backwards in here. That's the letter right there that I put on my wall. I'm a little nuts. I hang that stuff up. But that's the letter that Rex Schuerman wrote Keith Jesperson, and Keith sent it to me. So then I went viral, because not just him on a podcast, but then I have the letter. So I've been interviewed by all the major news stations and all these podcasts and stuff. But you really get to know him. So that's why. So not everybody can find out what really went on. And you find out artists. Like, that's artwork. I can't really see everything, but you can see the Beatles artwork there. That's Keith Jesperson. That's Keith Jesperson. Some other Jesperson artwork. Nico Clue artwork. You ever seen a movie, The Goodfellas? Henry Hill. Where's that? Right there. That's Henry Hill artwork. Herbert Mellon's up there. So I got a room full of crazy stuff. Oh, but I wasn't saying before, where Bill on Halloween, I'll move the camera over a little bit. So Bill made that mask. I'm pointing, like you can see, I'm pointing to the screen. Made the mask, made the shirt, and that axe, that's an axe that he made in prison. The inside of a potato chip thing, where, the bright part or the shiny part inside of potato chips. He actually made that. And what's wild, he made this too. Now picture Bill. Bill's not a small guy. Bill's a large guy. He put some meat on, he put some weight on him. He said the only person on Halloween who dressed up at his facility in Cheshire, and the piece behind me here, he made that. And I picture him standing in his doorway, dressed in that hood. They allowed him to do it, and he said he was just breathing heavy the whole time. He was just breathing heavy, holding that axe, and with that, he made this hand. This is where he put the candy in. He's still a couple pieces of candy in there. I don't know how the hell he got that out of the prison. I have no idea. But piece by first, it was like the mask came. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And it's a note by him. And then some more stuff's coming, he said. Then a shirt came. Now, I had to build the axe. They told me what I had to get. The only thing I had to do myself is to do, I had to get a roll of paper towels. And he sent me strips of his bed sheet and shoelaces. So that's kind of what the axe is made of. And then I put the rest of it together. Fake blood. I think it's some kind of food coloring, or I forget what kind of drink, wine punch or something like that, what the blood was in, whatever it is. But it's absolutely wild, and that's but just picture Bill. Here's William Howell, serial killer, standing at the front of his cell, breathing heavy all day long during two Halloweens ago. But it's just wild. But you don't get those stories. That's why I like doing the podcast, and people, that I've had on my show. Another person, I wish I could have did the video chat. For those of you people in prison now have tablets, and you can text them, you can call them. That's where Bill called. Bill called me from his tablet, not the phones anymore. And what is in chat? Ram me later. Okay, Kristen, cool. Hey, cool. And so Kai, the axe-wielding hitchhiker. Remember that story a couple years ago where he was hitchhiking and he really saved the girl's life? A guy was attacking her and he smashed this guy with a car, and he came out there with the wooden end of the axe, whacked the guy in the head a couple of times. He wouldn't stop it off the girl, and he flipped it over and really hit him with the butt end of the axe. Well, anyway, he got convicted of murder. And a guy was putting him up in his house for a couple of days, and he said that the guy had drugged him. He woke up and he felt, like taste the sperm in his mouth, and eventually ended up self-defense killing the guy, what he says. And he reached out to me. Well, I reached out to him a couple of times. He finally agreed to come on the podcast. And with these these tablets, you can do video chats with. They all suck. I mean, I did a couple video chats. If you obviously follow my YouTube page, that was when it was called The Lighter Side of Serial Killer. So you hear it'd be labeled The Lighter Side of True Crime, but when you hear me talking, it's The Lighter Side of Serial Killers. But I did a couple great ones, but most of them suck. So I've been trying to do twice now. We set up a video chat with Kai. Caleb is his real name. And it didn't work. It just didn't work. So hopefully, I saw an email right before I went on live, and I didn't open it yet from him. We're probably going to do something like this. So if that's something you want to hear, I'll have him call me, and we'll do another live video chat, and we can ask him questions, because he's very adamant about his innocence. Whether it's true or not, I haven't heard the whole story. We've just been emailing back and forth. We haven't had a phone call yet. He's only allowed 10 numbers on his chat as prison facility, so we have to drop one to put me on for the video chat. And so we'll see. So Kai's coming up. But yeah, a lot of guests that you really get to hear about, and especially if they're proclaiming their innocence. Maybe not. Some of them come on. I had a Jacksonville Strangler on recently on the podcast. You can listen to that upload. Paul DeRusso. Even David Carpenter professes his innocence, and most do. I mean, it shouldn't be a shock to anyone. And Pearl Fernandez was another one that I had on. Most people are okay when they know why I do what I do, that I talk to serial killers and have them on the show, because I know it's all for the positive good and changing people's lives, not just get to know them as a person. It's really about future victims, learning how they think, how they talk, kind of like what John Douglas does on a series, The Mindhunter, which actually I have hanging up there on the wall. I got an autographed picture from John Douglas, which is really cool. His book too. But the more we learn about him, the more we learn how to stop future crime. Like even Bill was saying, I mean, some of these people that he's incarcerated with, if they were just taught when they were younger, whether it's taught a trade, showing love and kindness, and we do have to start them out young. Probably what I do. But they're okay with serial killers. But somebody like Louise Turpin from the Turpin family, Louise and David Turpin, when they got charged with the torture of all their children, I think like 14, 15, 16 children, whatever it was. Louise was on my podcast before, and even I uploaded a little bit of video chat that I had with Louise. And then the podcast with Pearl Fernandez, and again with the torture of a child. It's like they're okay with serial killers, but don't touch a child. And I agree with it. I'll take all the heat for having people like this on my show. I get people freak out about it. But Pearl Fernandez is a touchy one. Just like same with Louise Turpin. At least Louise is there's a mental illness there. Again, we're not excusing anything, but I mean she was raped by family members when she was just a child, repeatedly. Her first date, and you can listen to the podcast that I did with Louise, her first date with David Turpin, she was raped. Very first date. And then and the part of her brain abnormality, whether it was incurred or born like that I don't know, and neither does she. Part of her mental illness is that extreme need to be loved. Now, we all need to be loved, don't get me wrong, but that I will do anything to keep this person. I can't let this person go. Anything. And David, he was abused his whole life, so that's the way he thought that's how you raise children. And she just conformed to that. And it's a mind-blowing story. And when you hear it coming from her own mouth, because you watch the YouTube documentary called The House of Horrors, it's wild. It's amazing. It's a miracle the girl even escaped, who barely could speak. And the daughter, and I forget what the daughter's name was, but she's thriving on Instagram, and she's hanging out with like Justin Bieber and his wife, and she really is making a good living now and supporting the kids. And even after the kids, you don't realize this, once the kids escaped from that House of Horrors and went to adoption agencies, they're abused more at the people, not the adoption, the what the hell is it called? You know what I mean? Not adoption, but the other thing. In those houses, there were abused there, and the money that people started giving to somewhat of a GoFundMe thing and whatever those trusts are that people were donating to, and they weren't even allowed to get the money to give even a bicycle, and it was just a horrible, horrible thing. But Louise has a little bit more compassion if you hear her than Pearl. Pearl was on the show. Pearl's just she's not really empathetic about anything. To blame most of it on her ex, really, and all the stories of her getting jumped. And the crazy thing is, she's at the same facility as Louise, and I was also at the same facility as serial killer Dana Gray. I've had Dana Gray on the podcast multiple times. I talk to her almost every couple of days. She actually just sent me a letter today in the mail. I don't even know what it is yet. I didn't even open it up. It's Chowchilla in California, and Pearl told me on the podcast, and it blew me away because I didn't know this. That Louise was getting jumped, and Louise was an old lady. She can't defend herself. So while she was getting jumped, and with the batteries in the pillowcase, that's a real thing. So these women were beating Louise Turpin, pretty bad. Like they were going to, I don't know if they're going to kill her or just, beating the hell out of her. Pearl Fernandez came in and broke it up. So how mind-blowing is that? That Pearl Fernandez basically saved the life of Louise Turpin at Chowchilla Prison. Mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. Blew me away when I heard that. But like I said, you get those stories you get to hear like on the podcast. And so I get a few other people coming up on the podcast too. Wayne Adam Fork, and I have him back on. I hope we're going to try to do a video chat with Wayne. And speaking of Keith Jesperson writing Rex Schumann, Keith wrote letters to Charles Manson before. Wayne Adam Ford, he wrote letters to. He was a pen pal with Arthur Shawcross. I got some of Arthur Shawcross art up on the wall, too. I didn't really know him that well. But it's amazing when you talk to these men and women in person. Of course, everybody thinks I'm nuts. And what we got? New videos. Yeah, what's the name? You said, yeah, serial killer you have a relationship with. Yeah, let me know who it is. Maybe I know, maybe I don't. And I tend to write the ones, I'm more fascinated with the ones with brain abnormalities. Like I'm not a big fan. Like if you're just an evil person, I'm not really interested in that because it's not like a thrill for me just to talk to these men and women. I'm more fascinated with the brain abnormalities. Like my last book, The Story of You. That's why you, like Yu Masaki, of how these men and women tick. I find out that while a woman's pregnant, every time she takes a puff of a cigarette, that's less oxygen going to that child's brain in utero. Every puff of a cigarette increases the odds that that child will become a violent offender. It's amazing. And bad nutrition, a drink, drugs, alcohol, everything combined. A child born with fetal alcohol syndrome because the mother was an alcoholic who smoked 2 packs a day, who did drugs, did crack, maybe even a failed abortion attempt from home. Wild things. Now, if that mother, when that child is birthed with fetal alcohol syndrome, high on heroin when a child's born, let alone smoking cigarettes constantly and drinking, all that kind of stuff, the odds that child will become a violent offender in the teenage years is about 70%. So we say, how did this kid, and we look at the kid who does the violent offense at 16, 17 years old of murder or robbery, look at that evil kid. Well, let's look back of why. How did this kid turn out to be that way? Not just psychopathy, but, there's a lot of contributor factors to it, let alone brain abnormalities. So I'm from like the last chapter of the story of you is the story of you. YOU is the last chapter. Like, what can we do? And you heard Bill talk about it. If you just joined in, William Howe, convicted serial killer, and when I asked him, well, what could have prevented you or some of these men and women, women or men at his facility? He said the same things. One of the same things that I preach is started out at young. Get information in the mother who's pregnant. Start that. Like, what can you do? Well, you can help. Encourage somebody who doesn't have a father. I started out in prison ministry, and like 90% of the people who are incarcerated did not have a father. So I don't care if you're religious or not. A boy needs a father in his life, or he's going to search for one. And if you're in a crime-ridden neighborhood, I don't live far from Philadelphia, Camden, New Jersey, and I go into Camden on a weekly basis to help in aftercare groups get men and women back on their feet. And I would say 100%, but about 90% don't have a father in their life. They don't know the father. Father's in jail. Don't have a relationship with them, never know him, whatever it may be. Or, a mother has multiple, baby daddy, so to speak. They're going to reach out for a father figure. And 9 times out of 10, that father figure is a gang member on the street, a drug dealer on the street, because he's the poppy guy. He has all the money. He has all the girls and all that stuff. And he's going to conform to that, and which is very sad. So helping with nutrition, getting a pregnant mother nutrition that she needs, not living in a shelter. So there's many ways we can help. I mean, it's not a cure for psychopathy, but there's everything. There's something that you can do to research a little bit more. I was reading some of the comments here. Let's see. Yeah, right. Definitely keep writing. And what I noticed that the people who got at the local facilities here in New Jersey, when they get out of prison, I've noticed, there's some good programs in different prison facilities, like me and Bill were talking about, and he had mentioned, teach these guys trades so when they get out, they can get a job. Or like Norway system where they started, where the local communities, the business owners there, they're the ones that go into the prison facility and teach. So when they come out, they have a physical job at that place, the people who were taught, which is great. But I noticed that while those kind of programs, some available here in Jersey, not like they are in North Dakota, and California is even doing a little better job. But I noticed more than anything else, it was love and kindness that helped turn these people's lives around. And now it's still a very small percentage. It's still the end of the cycle. If they get out on the streets again, they do drugs. Now, when you come out to our programs that we had, you would let your children, be babysit by these guys, because that's who they are when they're sober. You go back to the streets, drug kicks in, and they'll kill you for $5, literally, or mug you and rob you. But I noticed that through unconditional love, unconditional kindness, because most of them have never felt that in their life before. They're on their guard. Someone's after me. Someone's going to rob me. I can't be nice. I always got to be rough and tough on the streets. Got to keep it real, so to speak. But everybody who had a positive testimony, who turned their life around, coming through our groups, they gave credit to the group. Not just me, but people at the group who facilitated the group, other people who attended, just showing that kindness, helping them get a job, showing them how to get a job, identification. The group I was volunteering with, they own 5 or 6 houses in Camden, New Jersey. They let them live for free. They got to follow the rules. We'll help you get a job. Like the recycling plant hired everybody. And we controlled your money, and we gave it to you what you needed. We didn't take a penny of it. We just made sure you don't do anything stupid with it. You had to help volunteer. You got to feed the homeless, and worked your way up. But it was through that's where all the positive testimony came from. So people ask how I got started. When I noticed that, I'm like, okay, if I see positive change in my local prison facilities, the ones that I'm going into myself, building relationships with these men and women, and they're telling me they're turning their lives around because of people like me reaching out to them. Let me reach out to people who done real violent offenses. So I start writing to pretty famous people. Some of the first names I started getting letters back from was Charles Tex Watson of the Manson family, Bruce Davis of the Manson family, Mark David Chapman, the one who killed John Lennon. And they told me the same thing, or David Berkowitz. I've done multiple projects with David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, and got a nice little letter from him actually hanging up on the wall there. It was volunteers going into prison facilities. Like, these people can do anything they want, but they're volunteering their time, coming to prison, just about relationships. They don't want nothing. But just showing them kindness over and over again. And through my pen pal relationships at the time, now everything's digital for the most part, that I realized it was true. And through kindness. So I started reaching, I probably talk to 50 or 60 people a week, sometimes even in a day. You can see my messages blow up constantly on the apps or the letters that I get. And most of the artwork that I have is actually like thank yous or Christmas and holiday time, or thanks for doing stuff for me. And not that I'm putting myself up. I'm a mess. I'm the last person to put on the pedestal. I got my own issues. But I do realize through kindness, love, and compassion to these violent offenders, that's what's been turning their life around. Now, certainly a lot of them are getting out of prison. That I talk to. But some of the violent offenders and serial killers are like, why would you write them? They're never getting out of prison. Well, because David Berkowitz, the projects I've done with him, has reached thousands of people for positive change. He sent me a stack like this big of like a cartoon pamphlet depicting his life, the transformation from the son of Sam to now he calls himself the son of hope. And what that transformation was. Now, for him, it was faith-based as a Christian now. Hey, God can do miracles, but a lot of times if you're not a Christian or whatever faith that you are, I'm a Christian myself, so that's primarily the people that I dialogue with, because that's just my background, is the volunteering, the positive change, the constant encouragement, encourage. Now, Bill, we talked a little bit on the TikTok live that we did, was when I first started talking to William Howell, the word depressed isn't strong enough. Our first couple conversations were having me look up the do not resuscitate laws in Connecticut. He was trying to find a way to kill himself and like slip on a banana peel, anything he could do. He's like, I want to make sure that if I do something, if I get a hold of something, I can, put myself in a hospital or put myself in a coma or kill myself, that they do not have the ability or authority to resuscitate me. So that's the level of conversations, the morbid stuff we're talking about, like constantly. We start talking on the phone right away, and that's all he was talking about. Just want to kill myself. Understandable. You're never getting out of prison, and it's a dark, gloomy place. And he's not one of them North Dakota prisons where it's not that it's sunshine and rainbows, but it's a lot better than a Connecticut, a Cheshire facility where he's at. But little by little, he told me this afterwards. Where now when he woke up in the morning. Oh, maybe Keith sent me an email. So he had a little bit, not I won't say hope, but something to look forward to. And after a while, there's a few people that I trusted to write him to, especially some female friends of mine who wanted to encourage him. And hey, I got a message from a girl, and I got 2 or 3 pen pals. And just that mindset of knowing I'm waking up and I have some messages. And he's like, yeah, he would, if someone dropped a gun, he will kill himself. And don't get me wrong, he has said that. But he's not as much doom and gloom. Like, he's completely different. And you heard his sense of humor. He's funny. He's actually a funny guy. A lot of his humor came through today. If you heard the whole podcast. If not, I want to keep this up so you can go back to the beginning and listen to our conversation. That was not the case when I first started talking to him. It was very dark, very gloomy, I knew it was going to be a long way to get any kind of encouragement to encourage him. But little by little, he did it. And he's not a man of faith. He's not a Christian guy. A lot of people I talk to are faith-based, but he's not. It's just through positive, showing them positive change. And then maybe people who listen to this can hear his words, and maybe they can be encouraged by it by some way. That's why I love having, Wayne Adam Ford on, because all he wants to do is help other people. Just like Charles Tex Watson. Go check his website out. Go check David Berkowitz's website out. Just Google Tex Watson, Manson family website, David Berkowitz website. One of them is called Arise and Shine. I forget what the other one's called. I think Arise and Shine might be Charles Tex Watson. I forget. And go back, listen to the now. Tex won't do the podcast. He doesn't want to speak publicly. But Bruce Davis did. Probably a mistake by Bruce. I've known Bruce Davis for maybe 10 years. He came on the podcast. And he got in trouble with the parole board. Now, even then, I talked to his parole board. I talked to people at the prison facility. I talked to him multiple times, and because his parole was coming up, and they didn't like the name of the podcast, The Lighter Side of Serial Killers. Now, they listened to it. I gave him a transcript of it. I gave Bruce a transcript of it for the parole board. He talked a little bit about Charlie and when he first met Charles Manson. But vast majority of our podcast with Bruce was talking about positive change in his life. Faith-based too. He put the book on pause a little bit, but he's writing a book about, how God changed his life, and again, through positive, encouraging the people in his life. And believe it or not, he just got engaged. I forgot to tell you that. Right off the bat, he just told me last week that he's engaged. So Bruce Davis of the Manson family, formerly the Manson family, is engaged now. How wild is that? And Tex Watson, I think he's divorced now, but he has a couple of kids while he was in jail through conjugal visits and all that. So it's pretty wild. But Bruce got in a little trouble for doing a podcast. His parole was denied, partly because of that. And not just did he did the podcast, he lied a little bit about it to the parole board. I'm like, Bruce, what are you saying? That he got a little trouble for that. How many phone calls do you have with Keith? Well, I think one or two. We had like 30. So I don't know. He didn't perform too well on the parole board. But I think another couple months he's going back up for something, like another review, appeal or something like that. So hopefully he gets out. Because mostly what he said on the podcast was totally positive, totally encouraging. I said he did talk about some Manson stories and his relationships, but nothing negative, nothing about what'd you do with the bodies. None of that. I don't really ask people about that unless they specifically want to talk about it. But he get to know Bruce on a personal level, which no one really has. He hasn't really talked about books. That's why he's writing a book, to really let it out there. So we did 2 podcasts. Talk about him looking at Scientology and Christianity and different religions. And it was just wild talking to him. On the show. I think it encouraged a lot of people. So yeah, people can be encouraged by listening to these men and women who are on death row or never getting out, and to help change other people's lives or help them. Because Wayne Adam Ford, he knows with his mental illness that other people are struggling with it. I started earlier on this live broadcast talking about Wayne Adam Ford helping somebody who outside here who does have psychopathy and also does not have the ability to feel any joy. It's just a brain abnormality. And she's just a kid, 18, 19 years old, beautiful girl, have the urge. And she told me she wants to get pregnant just so she can eat the fetus. That's what we're talking about. Is the level of mental instability and brain abnormalities. And his heart went out for her. Put them in touch with each other through the prison app. And he's been encouraging her. So even in, like, he's not on death row anymore, but he was until he got transferred. Still positive change. So as I try to do my best about it, I'm not promoting me. I'm just kind of why I do what I do. But that's about it for that. So I got plenty of guests on the show. I got plenty of guests coming up. Hope you enjoyed the live. I'll try to get more people on here. Oh, somebody else has a question. How do you feel about it? Yeah, I had, it's funny, I asked, I think Bill about that on live too. I did a podcast with Wild Bill Holbert and the Panamanian. He was on my podcast a few times, but on here, we actually did a video chat on here. And was that the one, maybe the one before that, where he talked about women's fascination with serial killers. And it is a term for that. Like you said, if you look in the chat, I don't know how to pronounce, too far away to see exactly what it is, how to pronounce that. But that's what it is. And I also had Dr. Scott Bond on the show, one of the world's leading criminologists. It was a great one-man show. He's touring the country. I've seen it a couple times. He's been on a podcast a bunch, talking about women's fascination with serial killers. And he gives more of the scientific, explanation of it. But even Wild Bill, and even my followers, the vast majority of my followers are women. I still got a bunch of guys, but the vast majority are women. And if you look at the podcasts that are out there, Wine and Crime, and all these people who follow, hundreds of thousands of followers, they're mostly women. So women do have a way more of a fascination with this stuff than men do. But the fact of being sexually attracted to them, and that's above my pay grade of exactly why. But go back and listen to Dr. Scott Bonds on my podcast. We get into that in some detail. But Wild Bill talks about it too. And even though he's in a Panamanian prison, a hitman, and he's actually getting out. They finally gave him a release date, believe it or not. In Panama, he can't come to the States anymore. He'll get arrested right away. So he has to live overseas. And he's told me he just wrote a new book. And I literally just yesterday, I got a message from him. In the Panamanian prison at La Jolla, you can have guns. You can smuggle a gun in. There's shootings there all the time between inmates. There's cell phone towers. They get there and they can share cell phones. And it's a horrible, horrible prison. Barely any running water, but you can have a gun. In his new book, he showed me the first page of it. He gives me a shout out right away. He thanks his mom, and then he thanked me. So I'm like the second one getting thanks in the beginning of the book. I thought that was I guess an honor, I guess you could say, the best way to put it. Thanking me for all the help I've given him over the years and encouragement. I helped him write his first book. And so give me a big shout out. But he talks a lot about that, about women's fascination with serial killers and violent offenders. And he's like, W2F, a gun? Yeah, if you just Google La Jolla Prison in Panama, there was riots there, gang shootings. He's kind of not a leader of a gang, but he's like the mediator between the gangs there, and also a prison chaplain, Wild Bill Holbert, William Dathan Holbert. And he talked about it on the podcast too. But yeah, they have guns there. They can have guns smuggled in. He got in trouble because he was at the nicest part of the prison. And for a gringo, for like American going there, usually, you're at the bottom of the totem pole, but his popularity gave him status, and he could already speak the language there. Well, anyway, he did an article, agreed to do an article for a publication called The Mirror. So if you Google Wild Bill Holbert, the UK Mirror, you can see the article. What Bill messed up was he's told them, he sent them pictures of him at the prison, and they promised not to post them. Well, guess what? They posted them. Imagine that, a journalist lying. Well, in the pictures, it's Wild Bill holding wads of $100 bills. When he got the money, they have prostitutes to come in. One day a week, the prostitutes come in if you have enough money. They're ordering out takeout and Kentucky Fried Chicken and all these places down there. They're barbecuing sausage and hot dogs on there. And well, guess what? The prison found out about the article. Threw him in Sector C. Sector C is the worst part of the prison. It's just a nightmare. You get running water once a day, maybe twice a day. And sometimes if you're lucky. If not, if you got an upset stomach and the toilet backs up, well, guess what? You got to poop on a paper towel, put the paper towel up on the window, and the lowest man on the totem pole has to come around and collect all that. Yeah, I hope you don't want to be the lowest man on the totem pole in that prison. But yeah, there was a riot, and he was there. And he's seen multiple shootings and stabbings at his prison facility. You got enough money, you can bribe the guards with anything there. And it's not like an American prison. And you can see, you can follow him on Facebook, find a Wild Bill. I think if you go to my podcast on here, when I had him last video one, in the description was all the links you can find, because he has a phone. He has access to social media. He has access to WhatsApp. That's why he sends me WhatsApps all the time. And you can see, I don't know if you can. I guess I can unplug this now because I'm not going to be on the phone anymore. If I go to my WhatsApp, maybe if I can play this. This is Wild Bill Holbert from Panamanian prison. Let's see.
Whenever you want to. I'm going to send you a copy of it so you can read it. Also, you're mentioned in it, and I just ordered 20 author copies. So when I get the book, I'll sign one for you as well, and give you a signed copy, so like a physical copy. But here, it doesn't take very long to read. Maybe you'll read it one evening. Honestly, it's like three. It's not very long, and but I think it's certainly the best thing I put out yet by far. Anyway, read it if you don't mind, and when you get a chance, and the next time you're going to read a book, read this one, please, and then let's do a show about it if you don't mind. I'd like to do another one of those video shows. I just put the video. So if you notice, you got a few views, about another 100 views on that. I just put the thing in my Facebook group, and a lot of people watching. I'm really I'm gaining quickly in popularity right now. Actually, I did a couple of things and.
Yeah. So that's Wild Bill, Panamanian prison. So yes, they do have phones, Panamanian prison, and he has WhatsApp, let alone Facebook pages and things like that. But if you go to my last podcast with Wild Bill, you can see all of his links that you can talk to Wild Bill. And for a while, we were doing shout outs, because he really needed money for a while, and he gets supported a lot now. And people were doing shout outs. He had $10, we do a shout out. And I send money to his mother's PayPal account to give him money in prison. He's being supported by a lot of people now, and he's going to get out. So it looks like in a couple of years, believe it or not, he's actually going to get out of Panamanian prison. It's pretty wild, but he won't be coming into the States again. And yeah, it is interesting. It's wild. And he has a great voice. He has a great voice for radio and for podcasts, and I guarantee he's going to be doing a podcast. Maybe we'll talk about that when he does another podcast coming up. And we'll do one like he said. He wants to come on the podcast again to promote the book, and which is good. So I feel happy. I got a little shout out right away in it, which is kind of cool. And I think you can see, I don't know if I can be able to see on this screen or not. You see, kind of give a, oh, see if you can read it. And right there, Keith Revere, author, podcast host. Just like a little bit of shout out. I thought that was kind of cool. Or give a special thanks, that's what it's called. So that's wild. And Tuesday, those of you who are following along on my social media, I get a drink. My mouth is so dry. Over here in Jersey, it's going to be like 9 degrees, I think, Tuesday. It's been dry as hell. My heater stays on the whole time. Mouth is so dry. If you know, Michael Bay did the documentary of, that was his name, Haddon Clark, the cross-dressing cannibal, as they say. And I've known Haddon for years. I probably have 400 or 500 pieces of artwork from Haddon Clark. When just, wow, you never know what Haddon's going to send you. I mean, here, he sent me a pair of glasses, broken glasses, a yarmulke hat that he sent me. It's always adventure with Haddon's going to send. I have a pair of his boxer shorts he sent, a wool hat, artwork. I can't get up and show you now with the camera. He'll just do like a picture of his face and shave his beard hair. You put the beard hair in a little plastic envelope, attach it to the picture, and said, hey, you can glue my beard to my face, so it's me. So it's a little wild. But anyway, Haddon Clark, it's funny because I was talking to Haddon, and he was saying Michael Bay, this famous director, was talking to him. Now, Haddon has a lot of mental illness. And stuff with Haddon, yeah. And he was telling me Michael Bay is talking to him. Now, I'm not believing a word that Haddon says. And he's like, oh, here's his number. I was like, all right, give me the number. Let me call him just to see. So I called the phone number up, and it wasn't Haddon. It wasn't Michael Bay. It was some other guy who was eating dinner. And he's like, oh, call me back in a little bit. All stutter eating dinner. Let me do it. Stop calling Haddon. Leave the guy alone. Come to find out, that was Michael Bay's assistant. I'm like, holy crap, it really was Michael Bay. Well, he had a deal with Haddon Clark, where Haddon Clark had a deal with Michael Bay that he did not honor. I won't go into details what it was, but Michael Bay did not honor the deal. Therefore, Haddon Clark says, well, I'm not talking about the murders. I'm not talking about the crimes. That's all really he wanted to know is talk about the crimes. So in a documentary, you don't hear Haddon talk about the crimes. You talk a little bit here and there, but nothing's like what happened, what went wrong, where's the bodies and this and that. And what about the ones you've been suspected of killing? There's like 3 or 4 other ones. And Haddon get into that. So most of the documentary is just the video footage of the police interrogation, which was disturbing on many levels, especially how Haddon asked for a lawyer, I don't know, 400 times, and the police refused and kept badgering him, pushed him, shoving him, headlocking him. It was disturbing how those guys weren't, arrested when all that came out. But hey, we're talking to a serial killer, so who cares? The public doesn't care. But it was just horrendous. And again, not minimizing with the victims, but just for police brutality, it was horrible. And they knew nothing that was going to be admitted in court. And again, it's Haddon with his psychotic, schizophrenic personality. It's not going to work with something like him. And anyway, after all that airs, Haddon calls me up and says, I want to come onto your podcast and talk about the murders. I was like, really? Okay. And again, usually it's the lighter side of true crime. It's not, the darker side. But sure, if that's what you want to do, then I'll do it. Now, if you have listened to Haddon talk, it's very hard to keep him on track. Now, he gets usually 15-minute phone calls like we had with William Howe. When Bill called us tonight, we get 15-minute phone calls. And sometimes he's limited about how much he can do. And with Haddon, in that 15 minutes, I might get about 8 minutes talking about what I want to talk about as far as like the murders from what he initially said. He'll go off in tangents, so it's hard to do it. And I get 1 phone call, maybe 2. So we've been at it for a few weeks now. And this is Tuesday nights. I can only do it Tuesday night, or he can only do it Tuesday nights. And so on Tuesday night, we're going to finalize everything. I think did I take the artwork downstairs? Or I have it here? No, I have it here. So first he sent me pictures, like real photographs of the victims, 2 victims and those he suspected of, and he wrote their names on the back. That's for whatever reason. And then he'll send me his handprints. Let's see here. Haddon Clark, you can see him where he signed them. The handprints. Microphone almost went. He'll send me footprints. See where he signed. Well, now this is where it gets interesting. Now, the 2 known victims that he is admitted to were Laura and Michelle Dorr. Well, he sent me this picture, and we'll see on the podcast. He's going to go into the details about him with Laura Hotlinger. He sent me this picture of Laura that he drew. Now, he usually draws, female, like little children doing sign language. He knows sign language. But this is the picture of Laura that he drew. The light. All right, she's sitting down. She's reading the Bible, and she signs it at the bottom. It says, Laura, I need you to swear on my Bible. So when we were talking about Laura, when I get that part of the conversation, I'm like, well, he's like, I drew you pictures of each of the ones I killed and people thought that I did. So when the Laura came up, I'm like, what does this mean? Had you swear on the Bible? Well, what happened? Her mother, Penny, think through a pastor, got him hired as her gardener and did some gardening work in the neighborhood. I was gardener for a while, and Haddon's going to tell the story, and I'll let him tell this, give a quick little synopsis of it. That mother forced him to wear women's clothing since birth, treated him horribly, and she was schizophrenic herself. And it was just, his brother is a little mentally ill too, not as bad, of course. His other brother's in prison for murder too, at the same facility. They don't even talk anymore. He doesn't even talk to his brother on the outside. As you watch a documentary, you would know. So anyway, Laura was away at school, so he looked at Penny like his mother, like he was not in love with her, but loved her like a motherly figure. Well, when Laura came back, for whatever reason, whether he's just uncomfortable being around Haddon, he thinks it was because jealousy, but maybe he's just uncomfortable because Haddon's a little different, to say the least. And what she did apparently, and it makes sense. I mean, I do believe him from this. She took items from her mother's, like jewelry, I think it was primarily, and said she found it in Haddon's possession. Like Haddon was stealing from her. She believed her and got Haddon, fired basically. And it wasn't so much that he got fired, but he loved her mother, Penny Hotlinger, Hotling, I think I pronounced that, like a mother, and he just snapped. And he's already off. But that's what really made him snap. He's like, all right, well, now she's going to pay. So before that, she said, in my basement, I have a whole bunch of boxes and stuff. You can have anything that's down there. It was basically her son's clothing and Laura's clothing. He took it all. He gave all the son's clothing away. He kept all of Laura's clothing, and he would wear it. So, and again, I'll just do the brief story. I'll let him tell it on the podcast. But he snuck into the house. He knew the key was. They took the key from him, but he knew what it was. It was a spare key over by the garage door or something like that. So he broke into the house, got Laura. Got it dressed in Laura's clothing and a wig. So now imagine Laura seeing this. I don't have the picture of Laura. I think it's downstairs. What he made her do, one of the things he made her do, is very disturbing other things that he forced her to do. And as far as the picture goes, I'll just stay with this was, gave her a Bible. And remember, she's sitting there that way, looking at him dressed in her old clothing. He made her swear that the person she was looking at was her. He made her put her hands on the Bible and swear that Haddon Clark was her. She's like, tell me I'm Laura. And he made her swear that he was some other person. I forget the person's name. But just think of that, how mind-altering that is, that the terror that she probably was going through, looking at Haddon, dressed in her clothing, in a wig, forcing her to swear that the person that she's looking at is her. And at that point, he did some other things to her. Well, he'll be the one telling you that. He duct taped her. So when he duct taped her, what he didn't realize is, because he wanted to mess with her some more. The plan was, while she was duct taped, to take her out into the woods and do more horrible things with her. It didn't happen because when he duct taped her, he accidentally duct taped the nose too. Basically killed her. And now he said in interviews before that he accidentally killed her. And he did. And I mean, again, this is his story. He did accidentally kill her because the plan was probably would have killed her later, but the plan was to do more torturing to her and take her into the woods and do more horrible things. But the duct tape killed her, suffocated her, and there was blood at the crime scene. So as the documentary, the cop said it was ungodly amount of blood when they found. He says, no, all I did was, the reason there was blood, because I got a pair of scissors and I cut the duct tape and I nipped her ear. Now, the ear does bleed a lot. Look at Donald Trump when he got shot in the ear. There's blood all over the place. So the only blood was there was really just from the ear itself. And then from there, we talk about disposing of the body. And some of the other ones, now this is Michelle Dorr. This is sadly the little girl that he murdered. And we didn't go into full details about this. I'm not sure how much detail is going to go. He has her saying, hey, retard, is Elizabeth home? because they live next door to his brother's house at the time where he was staying. No, she isn't. She's with her father and brothers at the soccer game. Well, the little bit that he did tell me is from little Michelle calling him retarded is reason why he killed her. And we'll get into details about that, because one thing is that from the documentary that I did know is the murder happened at the brother's house, from what the documentary says. And when they found out, the brother had already sold the house. And the room where they suspected the murder happening, they already sanded and refinished the hardwood floor that was there. But apparently in the cracks of the hardwood floor was some of Michelle's DNA. Now, I asked him briefly about it before the podcast was really going, and he said he didn't kill her in the house. So, again, I'm not sure what's going to be truthful and what's not. I will let him say, because I don't know. So that'll be this Tuesday. If you watch the documentary, John Truitt was there. And a lot of the things that he had admitted to from what his side of the story was because John Truitt, who apparently he thinks is a rat. Oop, there we go. John Truitt is a prison rat. John Truitt and his wife promised Haddon, again, he's mentally ill, so he's going to believe things, that they could get him out of prison into a mental institution, a mental hospital, just admit to things. And maybe John, to lighten his sentence, was giving this information to the police. So he was admitting that, you just tell everybody that you think I'm Jesus Christ. Tell everybody you admit to these murders and this murder and that murder. So he did, thinking that he was going to go into a mental institution. That obviously wasn't the case. And then just some bad luck. Mary Mount was one. They do a depiction of Mary Mount. Another murder, disappearance when he was working at Camp Wilmette. And a young girl and a guy were hitchhiking to go to a show, concert, like a festival. And he did give him a ride. He admitted that he knew him, and he did work there. And one of the victims, I think relatives or mothers or sisters, something like that, worked at that. And he drew a picture of himself working at Camp Wilmette. One of the other victims, Doreen, said, "Hey, Fred, have you seen Doreen? Wallingford Bowling Championships." And again, this is his mind. So it was a missing person he was a suspect of. And so he draws a picture of him. This is what we're talking about here. And the lady in the dunes over at Race Point, I believe, where he was just fishing, and he came across a dead body, and the hands were missing. Hands were cut off. And they suspected him. Well, of course, you're a serial killer, and you just found a dead body with hands cut off. So coincidental. There's a lot of these have been coincidence, so we happen to be in the area. Now, with this, he'll tell the story that he saw the person there who dumped the body, and he was trying to hide a little bit from the dunes, and the person saw him. And he was leaving, the person kept following him. In fact, followed him all the way back to his house. Hadn't had a gun on him, hadn't started shooting at him. Or he said, "I didn't want to kill him, I just wanted to shoot at the car." And he drew a picture of this. "I was at Race Point in 1974 in Cape Cod fishing when a body was put in the dunes late at night." And so he drew a picture of this. And I'll go into detail about that, let him tell the story. And some other pictures that Sarah, a little girl, Sarah Pryor, disappeared. I think her father was convicted of killing her. But again, he was there. He was right in the area in the time. He just did that's about Sarah. And then another one about Jeffrey. "Before I came to prison, my brother Jeffrey never wore any female clothes. On Michael Bay documentary, the TV show, Jeffrey was wearing a female pink jumper with black boots. Is Jeffrey into female clothes now? ? I don't know." He just drew a picture of that. So we should finalize Tuesday, but it's Haddon. You never know. And sometimes you can't even call for one reason or another. Haddon just sent me a package of artwork. He's afraid for himself right there. I mean, one guy didn't jump him, but threatened him. He wanted to give him all the commissary. He said no. He got moved to a different part of the facility just for his own life's sake. So he's actually scared for his life right now. Again, you get his popularity, let alone the documentary that came out. So he sent me almost all the artwork that he had. He sent me a package today. He said, "I got 3 packages coming. The first one I got today had to be about 15 pieces of artwork that he sent." And his artwork's usually like, a girl doing sign language or something. And also like a bear. They do a sign language for a bear. That's mostly what he sends. And 2 other packages are coming from him, I guess, with more artwork. I'm not really sure. But we should finalize that podcast. And I have to edit it together so it sounds like one. And I have to cut out, the nonsense things that we talked about, not pertaining to the case. So it just kind of sounds like one conversation. It's not going to be a video. It's going to be on the Spotify channel, Lighter Side of True Crime. So I guess that's about it. I'm losing my voice. I've been on here for a while, about an hour and a half or so. So I hope everybody enjoyed yourselves. This is just the first live that we're doing. We're going to do a bunch more. I said I have a few people that are going to come on the live with us. If you have any requests of who you want me to come on, who want to come on live, we got Kai the Axeman Hill Checker coming on. We got Keith the Happy Face Killer Jesperson. We'll get him on. Wayne Adam Ford come on, and a few other people I've been talking to. Maybe we'll have Bill on again. I can't do a live with Wild Bill Holbert. Don't have the capability and the bandwidth, whatever, from his at Panama with his smuggle phone. He can't do that here, so we have to do something different for that. I'll have to piece it together a little bit. So that's about it. Anyway, I appreciate you guys hanging out there. Thanks for all the questions, and until next time, see ya.